All right. Okay. All right. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of the Mr. Islam Answers Back show, where we're streaming live on YouTube. So if you want to actually see the notes and the information that we're providing, you can see it on YouTube. And of course, if you're listening on Clubhouse, you can listen on Clubhouse. Don't forget to click the link up top to join my Patreon. Like I always tell you, I give you access to a lot of the notes and information that I use, that I've used over the years in my debates. When you hear me talking here on YouTube or on Clubhouse, the information, I have the notes already written out for you. You can just print them out and use them for your own self-study, or use them for yourself if you decide that you want to get into, debates and apologetics and things like that, things of that nature. And of course, you'll be supporting the platform and the content that we create. And in return to be thankful, I give you access to these notes that, like I said, you can use and for your own personal study. If you want to decide that you want to get involved in debates and things of this nature, these notes will come in handy like that. Also, take advantage of my book. It's available on Amazon.com, Amazon Kindle, You can get it in paperback, or you can get the ebook. Everything is available on my profile page. So don't forget to like and follow if you're not already following on these platforms. And let's get started. All right. So basically, what's the purpose of this room and this video? As of late, there is this thing going around, it's been going around for a long time, of course, but just recently, there was particularly here on Clubhouse, for those who are following Clubhouse, there's the woman named Snow, right? You may have seen her there, here and there on Clubhouse, going around with these PTRs, misrepresenting parts of Islam, trying to misconstrue it to make it look like Islam is violent, or Islam is anti-woman, or, whatever false claims they want to make against Islam. So not too long ago, I saw her. She had a PTR. She was running around trying to make this claim that Islam says that women are equal to dogs, right? You may have heard the claim. So she was running around with that in her PTR. But what I noticed is that in her PTR, it was a dishonest PTR, because it only showed part of the hadith. So basically, for those who are on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. For those who are on Clubhouse, if you want to watch it later on YouTube, you can watch it later and see. Hold on a second. Let me pull that up and see the actual hadith. I'm going to show the hadith. I'll read it to you, of course, so you can hear it on Clubhouse. All right. So let's take a look at it. So basically, this is a hadith about what nullifies the prayers, right? Or what allegedly nullifies the prayers. So what she did, Snow, if you hear this, if you join the room, right? She only read part of the hadith, and even I was in the room when she read it. She read it live, but again, she read only part of the hadith, and many of them do this in their dishonesty. They'll only read the part of a verse of the Quran or part of a hadith. They'll leave off the rest of it, because the rest of it many times refutes the claim that they're trying to make, which is strange, because if you know that the rest of the verse or the rest of the hadith refutes you, why would you even use it? Like, I wouldn't want to, like, if I know that I'm only quoting part of the verse, and I know that the rest of the verse is going to refute me, like, you'd be a fool to use that. But for some reason, these people, they seem to be, I guess the only word I could say is dumb, that they don't realize that the other part of the verse refutes you. The other part of the hadith refutes you. So here's what she did, right? Here's what she did with the hadith. It says, narrated Aisha in Bukhari, hadith number 511, right? It said, the things which nullify the prayers were mentioned before me. They said, prayer is annulled by a dog, a donkey, and a woman. I said, you have made us like dogs. And then she stops right there, right? She stops right there, like as if that's the end of the hadith. So I told her, I was in the room that day, I said, read the rest of the hadith. She wouldn't do it. So I kept saying, hey, read the rest of the hadith. Read the rest of the hadith. And then they kicked me down into the audience. For those who are familiar how Clubhouse operates, she didn't want to read the rest of the hadith. They kicked me down. The guy who was running the room, James, is tired. That's why I'm calling you out. James is tired, who claims to be a fair admin, wasn't fair at all. So, and at this moment, she was haranguing brother Khalilullah, right? She was haranguing him, and she kept on badgering him. So I jumped up, to join in and give the brother a hand. And instead of like stopping her from continuously haranguing the brother, instead he throws me out. The guy James is tired. He throws me out instead of dealing with her. And all I was doing was saying, I just kept telling her, read the rest of the hadith, read the rest. That's all I kept saying, right? And just for that, he throws me down and lets her to continue to harangue the brother. She kept interrupting the brother. He didn't say nothing about it. She was being very belligerent. He didn't do nothing about it. But when I come up to join, to join in, now all of a sudden I'm the one getting kicked down. But the main point was that I wanted her to read the rest of the hadith, because if she read the rest of it, it would have refuted her. So again, she only quoted the part that says, the things that annul the prayer are a dog, a donkey, and a woman. And then Aisha says, I said, you have made us like dogs. And then she stopped right there, as if that's all the hadith said, right? So then if she would have read the rest of the hadith, she would have seen that the rest of the hadith clearly says, where Aisha basically refutes the idea that the prayer is annulled by a woman, etc. The rest of the hadith says, after Aisha says, you've made us like dogs, Aisha says, I saw the Prophet praying while I used to lie in between him and the Qibla. Whenever I was in need of something, I would slip away, for I didn't like to face him. But in other words, Aisha is proving that a woman in and of herself does not nullify the prayer, for the simple fact that the Prophet would get up to pray, and she sometimes would just be still laying down in bed or whatever, and she would be, as it says, I would be in between him and the Qibla, right? I would be between him and the Qibla, proving that the woman in and of herself does not nullify the prayer. So Snow again showed her dishonesty by not reading the whole hadith, because again, I only reason I could give is that she knows the rest of the hadith refuted her. But these people, in their bigotry, in their dishonesty, in their hearts full of hatred against Islam, they want to purposely misrepresent. This was a purposeful misrepresentation, brothers and sisters. This was a purposeful misrepresentation, because the rest of the hadith is clear right there. There's no way you could miss it. You know what I mean? There's no way you could miss it. It's part of the hadith. So I could only give her the charge that she was purposely trying to misrepresent this hadith, because the rest of the hadith clearly shows that Aisha refutes the claim. Okay, she clearly refutes it. So as you can see, Aisha refutes this idea that a woman in and of herself nullifies a prayer as her example. And another thing about this, if these people were also truthful in their attempts to research and study, they would see that in the succession of the hadith, right, in these hadiths, back to back, they're all by Aisha, showing how this idea is false. So this hadith was number 511 of Bukhari, right? If you go to 512, again, it's Aisha again. She's further. She's just narrating proof after proof that this idea was not accurate. So here's what she says in the next hadith. Again, this is if they're honest. If these people were honest in their research, all they would have to do is look at that hadith, then go to the next one, because they're right next to each other. 511. 512, etc. Back to back, Aisha refuting the idea that a woman in and of herself nullifies the prayer. So the next hadith that comes right after it, you can't miss it, it's the next one right after it, 512. It says, the Prophet used to pray while I was sleeping across in his bed in front of him. Whenever he wanted to pray with her, he would wake me up and I would pray with him. But notice she speaks how the Prophet would get up to pray before her, and she would be in front of him, and then sometimes he would wake her up to pray along with him. But nonetheless, she would be in front of him praying, and the Prophet didn't consider it obviously a nullification of his prayer. Right? The next one, hadith number 513. Again, this is right in succession. 511. Hadith number 512. Hadith number 513. They're all by Aisha. Here she goes again. This is 513. The wife of the Prophet, Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, said, I used to sleep in front of Allah's Messenger with my legs opposite his Qibla, i.e. facing him. And whenever he prostrated, he pushed my feet and I withdrew them. And whenever he stood, I stretched them back out. Aisha added, in those days there were no lamps in the houses. The main point is what? The Prophet would get up to pray, and she would be laying right in his path of prayer. And it didn't nullify his prayer. He obviously did consider it nullifying his prayer. The only thing he would get her to move is when he had the prostrate. So he would put, as he's on his way down the prostrate, he'd push her feet out the way. She'd withdraw them so he could prostrate. Once he stood back up, she stretched her legs right back out in front of him. And he didn't consider it a nullification of the prayer. This is for you haters out there. This is if you're an honest researcher. See, if you were honestly researching this, you would look and you would dig and you would say, well, let me make sure before I make this argument, let me research and find out what the Muslims actually believe about this, right? So you would look at these hadiths and you would see that you don't have an argument, right? You would see that you actually don't have an argument if you were actually honest researchers. Because again, like I said, you can't miss this. Snow and haters, they're back to back. It's Hadith 511, Hadith 512, Hadith 513. They're back to back. So if you were honestly researching this, there's no way you could come away thinking that, oh, a woman is equal to a dog in Islam. Right? So here's another one that further goes. Again, this is 514. Again, in succession, back to back to back to back. So this one is by Aisha as well. Hadith number 514 of Bukhari. The things which annul prayer were mentioned before me, and they were said to be a dog, a donkey, and a woman. I said, this is like the first one that I read, 511. It's pretty much the same thing. I said, you have compared us to donkeys and dogs. But Aisha says, by Allah, I saw the Prophet praying while I used to lie in my bed between him and the Qibla. Whenever I was in need of something, I disliked to trouble him. So she herself says she would slip away by the side of his feet. That's by her own initiative, she says. But notice the Prophet didn't consider it a thing that would nullify his prayer because he didn't tell her anything. He would get up and pray and she'd be right in front of him, between him and the Qibla. In this one, she says on her own, she would just get out of his way for whatever reason. She didn't like it. But, in the other ones, so basically she's just showing you that in different instances how it was. Sometimes she could be laying down in front of him and, he would push her feet out the way when he had the prostrate, and then she would pull her feet out the way. And when he stood back up, she would stretch them back out. And other times, he might wake her up to pray with him. He would get up to pray first, and she'd be laying right there with no issue. And then he might wake her up to pray along with him. In other instances like this one, he would get up to pray, and she's between him and the Qibla. He didn't say anything about it. But on her own, she said, on her own, herself, she didn't like to be in front of him. So she would just, slip out of the way on her own. But in any case, she's proving that the woman is not compared to a dog. Okay, now let's get to the heart of the matter, right? Let's get to the heart of the matter, because the thing in Islam in actuality is that no one is supposed to pass in front of you. Whether a man, a woman, a child, an animal, nobody's supposed to pass in front of you when you're praying. Right. So it's not just a matter that a woman is in this issue. A woman is somehow a nullification of prayer. And according to Islam, when you're praying, no one is supposed to pass in front of you. Right. So we have some narrations that back this up. Right. There's many hadiths that back this up where, you see the Prophet, peace be upon him, talking about the things that, when you're praying, you're supposed to have what they call a sutra, like a guard, something to, act as a like a guidepost or a guard post between when you're praying, so that no one passes in front of you. Right. So let me show you that on the screen. Those of you who are following on YouTube, like I said, you'll be able to see the hadiths and things that I'm bringing. So let me go back. Let's go back, and then I'll show you that in actuality, no one is supposed to pass in front of you. Whether it's the woman or anybody else, man, woman, child, no one is supposed to pass in front of you. So I'm proving this to prove that it's not the idea of a woman. It's the idea that no one's supposed to do it, right? No one is supposed to pass in front of you when you're praying. Okay. So here we are. This is Bukhari Hadith number 510. Okay. It says that, this one is related by Busr ibn Sa'id. It says that Zayd bin Khalid sent him to Abu Jaim to ask what he had heard from Allah's messenger about a person passing in front of another person who was praying. Abu Jaim replied, Allah's messenger said, if the person who passes in front of another person in prayer knew the magnitude of his sin, he would prefer to wait 40, either 40 days, 40 months, or 40 years, rather than to pass in front of him. Okay, and then Abu an-Nadr, he said, I don't remember exactly whether he said 40 days, 40 months, or 40 years. Okay, but in any case, in other words, you would wait a long time if you passed in front of another person. So as you can see here, notice how this hadith shows that it doesn't matter. It's not only restricted to a woman, as if the woman is some kind of lowly creature or whatever. As this hadith shows you, no one is supposed to pass in front of you, as this narration shows. Whether it's a man, woman, child, nobody's supposed to pass in front of you. And so as the Prophet is saying here, peace be upon him, that if the person knew the magnitude of that sin, they would wait as long as possible before they passed in front of a praying person. So as you can see here, it's very clear that it doesn't matter. It's not something that only a woman is some kind of lowly creature, or she in and of herself nullifies your prayer or something like that. Nobody's supposed to pass in front of you, as these hadiths show. So I'm just trying to prove to you that it's not about whether you're a woman. It's nobody's supposed to pass in front of you, as this hadith clearly shows you. But then let me further prove to you that, again, it is not the woman that does it at all, because here we see I'm showing these hadith again. For those who, if you want to see the hadith, you'll have to come on to YouTube to see them, all right, or check it out after we're done on Clubhouse so you can see it. So here's some other hadiths from Bukhari that further show that, again, a woman passing in front of you praying in and of herself doesn't nullify the prayer at all, as long as you have what they call a sutra, a guidepost or guard post between yourself. Right? So here it says in Bukhari, this is volume 1, book 9, hadith number 474, narrated by bin Abi Juhayfa. It says, I heard my father saying, the Prophet led us and prayed a 2 rakat dua prayer and then a 2 rakat asr prayer at al-Batha. And with an anza, they said I guess this is a type of plant, with an anza in front of him, as we call a sutra, or a guardian thing, like you put it in front of you. While women, listen to this, while women and donkeys were passing in front of him, but they were passing in front of the guard thing, the sutra thing. All right, for the non-Muslims who don't understand, right? This is something that you put in front of you so people know that you're praying, and they understand not to pass directly in front of you. They'll have to go around the sutra thing, or the guard, the thing that you put in front of you as a guard thing, right? They'll have to go in front of that. And as long as they go in front of that, your prayer is fine. So as you can see, this hadith proves that, again, a woman, a donkey, none of that stuff nullifies your prayer as long as you have something in front of it. Okay, so the woman in and of herself does not nullify your prayer. She's not equal to a dog or anything like that. And we already proved, Aisha refuted that idea, because the Prophet got up to pray and a woman, his wife, would be laying in front of him and he didn't say anything about it. Okay, but when a person is actively walking, no one is supposed to actively pass in front of you intentionally, right? They're not supposed to intentionally pass in front of you, man, woman, or child, or animal. You're not supposed to let them pass in front of you, okay? As this hadith proves, a woman can pass in front of you if you have the sutra in front of you, the guard thing in front of you, and it won't nullify your prayer, okay? Let me give another one to further back it up, right? Here's another one narrated by the same person. This one is number 478 in Bukhari. 478, narrated by the same person, Aoun bin Abi Juhayfa. He said he said that he had heard his father saying, Allah's apostle came to us at midday, and water was brought for his ablution. He performed the ablution and then led us in Dhuhr and Asr prayers with an anza planted in front of him, while women and donkeys were passing beyond it. Okay, so all the haters who want to misrepresent the hadith about what things that nullify the prayer, the woman and the donkey and the dog, and the woman is allegedly compared to the donkey and the dog, even though the hadith shows that Aisha refutes it in the hadith itself. You don't have to go to another hadith for Aisha to refute it. She refutes it within the hadith itself. When the things are mentioned in front of her, she then exclaims, wow, you're basically like comparing us to dogs. And then she proceeds to refute refute those things. Okay, but I'm showing these other hadiths to prove that a woman can pass in front of a person as long as they have the sutra in front of them, the guard post or whatever in front of them, and it won't do anything to affect their prayers. Okay, so hopefully you guys, we're clear on that. All you haters who are misrepresenting that, we're clear. And here, let me bring up another thing too. Right? Another thing that I also seen over the years. Now, this is what I've seen over the years, where people have tried to make the argument that when the things that nullify the prayer were mentioned to Aisha, they've misrepresented it and made it seem like the Prophet was saying this to Aisha. Right? So in other words, when it says the things which nullify the prayer were mentioned before me, and it was said that a dog, a donkey, and a woman nullify the prayer, they made it seem like I've heard people bring the argument as if the Prophet is the one saying it. And then Aisha saying to the Prophet, oh, wow, Prophet Muhammad, you made us like dogs. But clearly that's not the case, because in the hadith itself, what does she say? She says, that's not correct. I saw the Prophet praying, and I was laying between him and the Qibla, and the Prophet continued to pray. If it was the Prophet who was telling her the things that nullified the prayer, why would she then say that's not correct because I saw the Prophet praying, when that's the Prophet himself talking to her? See how idiotic these people are? You see how idiotic they are? You guys understand that? If it was the Prophet who was telling Aisha the things that nullify the prayer, how could she then refute him by saying the Prophet used to pray when I was in front of him, when that's the Prophet that she's talking to allegedly? Obviously, it's not the Prophet who is saying this to her, which is why she references the Prophet's prayer with her in front of him, to whoever is saying this to her. It's obviously not the Prophet, right? Right? It's obviously not the Prophet that is saying it to her, which is why she references and says, well, I saw the Prophet praying while I was in front of him. She's saying it to the people or the persons who are telling her the things that allegedly annul the prayer. It's not the Prophet that's telling her these things, because it wouldn't make any sense, right? It wouldn't make any sense for her to say, oh, well, I saw the Prophet saying that. Meanwhile, meanwhile, the Prophet is allegedly talking to her himself, telling her the things that nullify the prayer. But again, this shows you how I've come to the conclusion that a lot of these people are just straight dummies. Because I'm like, how did you come away with that? How did you come away with that conclusion when it's clear that she's referencing the Prophet himself to prove these people wrong? Does that make any sense that the Prophet is telling her and then she's going to say, well, I saw the Prophet praying, as if the Prophet is not standing right in front of her? You idiots. You know what I mean? Like, it just shows you how stupid they are, man. Like I said, I'm convinced that a lot of these people are just dumb. They're really dumb. They really lack proper reading comprehension skills, because I just don't see how they could have come away with such a conclusion. You know what I'm saying? I don't see how they could do it. You know what I mean? Let me see. So, yeah. So yeah, so you know what I mean? So this is the argument that they make, and it's just like, it's just so preposterous, man. It's just so preposterous how they come with this, right? You see what I'm saying? She's refuting whoever it said, because it doesn't mention who is saying it to her. All it says is the things which annul the prayers were mentioned before me. But it's clearly not the Prophet who is saying it. Peace be upon him. It's clearly not the Prophet. So whoever is saying it to her, she's refuting them. But it's not the Prophet who is saying it to her. As I repeat, it wouldn't make any sense for the Prophet to be saying it to her, and then she refutes the Prophet by saying, well, I saw the Prophet praying in front of me. Right? That sounds stupid, right? That doesn't make any sense. How are you going to refute the Prophet with the Prophet himself when he's the one talking to you right in front of your face, right? If anything, if it was the Prophet talking to her, you would expect her to say, well, excuse me, messenger, the other night you got up and prayed with me right in front of you. That would have let you know that she was talking to the messenger face to face. Obviously, that's not the case, right? That would have been the way the language would have been spoken if the Prophet was talking to her. She would have said, well, Prophet, messenger, the other night when you got up, I was sleeping and you got up and prayed and I was right in front of you. Why didn't you say anything to me then? Right? That would have been evidence that the Prophet was talking to her. But clearly that's not the case. She clearly references the Prophet, as in the third person, like he's not there. I saw the prophet praying while I used to lay between him and the Qibla. So obviously the prophet is not the one that's talking to her. It's very clear. It's very obvious. Only a person I mean, you'd have to have horrendous reading comprehension skills to not be able to see this. Okay? You'd have to have horrendous proper, reading skills to not be able to see this. Let me see. Can anybody have Brother X Planet on there? Can you ping him? Let me see. Can I ping him right now? Let me see. Because he's asking me this oh, wait a minute. There it is right there. Okay, I got you. All right. Here, I got you. All right. Here it is. Let me post it. There you go. Okay. There it is. All right. There it is. Bam. Okay, cool. All right, so yeah, so y'all see that. So again, this I mean, I'm putting out to everybody, but what prompted me to do it was this woman called Snow. For those on YouTube, you may not know her unless you come on Clubhouse, but yes, there's this woman named Snow. She's here on Clubhouse, and she's always going around trying to malign the prophet, peace be upon him, talk bad about Allah, talk bad about Islam. She misrepresents Hadith, she misrepresents verses of Quran, and this is one of the examples that I saw. So I kept it in mind. I said, you know what, I'm gonna make a show about that. And here we are now doing the show right now to refute the claims. And what I'm going to do, like I always do, is if anybody's interested, I'm going to, those of you on Clubhouse and if you don't want to come on YouTube, or even if you do, I'm going to take what I'm showing you. I'm going to take all these notes right here and I'm going to put it on my Patreon. So that way, if you want to have the notes and all the hadiths lined up, so you can just do it, have everything in one spot. If you want to refute this yourself, I'll put it on my Patreon, and then you'll be able to, of course you got to be a supporter, but join my Patreon, and then you'll have access to these notes for today's show, and then you'll be able to download it, and you can have it all laid out for you, nice and easy, where you don't have to do the homework yourself. If you want to do the homework yourself, then just come on over to YouTube, and then just you have to write the notes yourself. All right. So that's with that. Before we close out, again, let me remind everybody to make sure you like and follow those on YouTube. Make sure you like and follow the video. Again, join the Patreon. Check out my book, Clearing Jesus of Blasphemy. Support your brother, man. Support the work. We're working hard for this stuff. You know what I mean? We're working hard. So support your brother. Support the content. You know what I mean? Even if you just make dua for me, even if you just make dua that Allah allows, to help me to be successful at what we're doing and just, be able to maintain everything I'm doing. Even if you just do that, just support the brother. But if you can help by getting a copy of the book or joining the Patreon, believe me, wallahi, it helps me in ways you won't imagine. It helps me to further the dawah that I do. Because like I said, I don't just do it here. If you check my YouTube channel, you see that sometimes we actually take it to the streets. We go out on the streets. We do dawah on the streets. We're handing out free Qurans. We're handing out, autobiography of Malcolm X to help people in the neighborhoods that we're from to see how Islam changed his life. So I don't just talk. I'm out there doing the work. Me and some other brothers, we out there, we do the work. We go hands on. So your help in these areas, whether you buy the book or join the Patreon, or just if you just want to help by giving a donation or whatever, it helps us to get the materials to further, expand our reach and things like that. Just like the Christians do. Just like the Christians do. So I don't say this with any shame, because the Christians do it. It takes funding to get the message out there. And the Christians, they do it big time, as you already know. They do it big time. They support their content creators. They support the David Woods. They support the apostate prophets. They support whoever else is out there, the Sam Shimon. These people get their support. You ever check their platforms? The Christians are supporting their people who put out their message. So we need to be doing the same thing. And it's part of Islam, right? It's part of Islam. The zakat is permissible to go to people doing dawah and things like that. So this ain't about personal enrichment or anything like that. This is about the dawah. And like I said, I have a track record. If you check my channel, you will see that I'm about the dawah. I'm not trying to, do like the Christian preachers, getting, buying a Rolls Royce with the money and expensive suits and clothes. No, I pray that Allah keep me on the straight path, but my intention is to use it for exactly what it's for, to further the efforts of the dawah. So like I said, you can go to my YouTube channel. You can check my track record. You can see the videos, what I've done where we're out on the streets, giving out the Qurans, giving out the autobiography. You'll see that I've done debates, physical debates, face to face. So, you know, the track record is there. The resume is there. All right. But in any case, yeah, support the content. So now, like I said, before we wrap it up, right, I just want to prove that, to make it clear that Islam does not hold women in any kind of lowly disregard or any lowly manner, right? So let's go to the Quran, right? In Quran chapter 4, verse 124, all right? Again, for those of you who are on YouTube, you'll see the video. But Quran chapter 4, verse 24, here's how Allah views the man and the woman in Islam. It says, if anyone does deeds of righteousness, whether they be male or female, and they have faith or is a believer, right? Such will enter paradise, and they will not be wronged in the smallest manner. They will not be done wrong in the smallest bit. So as you can see here, Allah looks at the man and the woman who is a believer with equality in his eyes, right? In his eyes, he says, look, whether you're a male or female and you're a believer and you do good deeds and you believe and have faith, they will enter paradise, and Allah says they will not be wronged in the slightest bit. Okay? So this is Islam's view about women. Okay? They're not compared, they're not equal to dogs and donkeys and stuff like that. No. Okay? As these verses here show, let me give you another one. Chapter 4, verse 1 says, O mankind, be careful of your duty to your Lord, who created you from a single soul, and from it created its mate. This is talking about the creation of Adam and Eve. And from them too has spread abroad multitudes of men and women. Be careful of your duty to Allah, in whom you, meaning you, the man and the woman, claim your equal rights or your mutual rights of one another. And be mindful towards the wombs, i.e. the wombs that bear you. For surely Allah has been a watcher over you. This is the view of Islam of women. They're not equal to dogs and donkeys and all that stuff like that. Okay? I believe I've made it clear from every angle. Quranic, those of you following Hadith, right? And so it's right there from the evidence of the Hadiths. It's clear from the Quran. It's clear that the women are not compared to donkeys and dogs. Right? We respect our women. Allah tells us to protect and maintain our women. As you see, Allah says He looks at the man and the woman equally, when they do the good deeds, and that they will both enter paradise and will not be dealt with the smallest bit unjustly. We see that Allah tells us that we are created from the man and the woman, a man and a woman, Adam and Eve, and from them too spread about many men and women. And we have to be careful of our duties that we claim in front of Allah of behalf of one another. The rights that you get from your wife, the wife gets from her husband, the man and the woman seeking rights of one another. Allah says to be careful of those rights that we seek in front of Him from one another. All right, it's very clear. But I'll end it like this. It's interesting that the Christians want to try to come and attack with this argument when in their book, we do have an example. Unfortunately, now we don't believe Jesus did this, but it's interesting that they would dare to come at us when in their book, right? I believe it's Matthew chapter 15. Matthew chapter 15, verse 24. Right? Where a woman is coming to Jesus, right? A woman is coming to Jesus, and she is seeking some assistance for herself, for her daughter, basically, right? And basically, this is in Matthew chapter 15 of the Bible, starting at verse 24. And he said to her, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And the woman came and she knelt before him, still, trying to beseech him for help. She said, Lord, help me. She said, but Jesus replied in verse 26 to her. Look what he said. Look who is compared to dogs in your book. He replied, it's not right to take the children's bread and toss it to dogs. Right? So if you want to make an argument, here we have an example of in your book, you Christian haters who try to attack Islam. Your Jesus is the one. Your Jesus is the one comparing women, if you want to play the game, comparing women to dogs. When this woman is asking for help, notice how he tries to push her, shoo her away. But she keeps coming. He tells her, look, I'm not sent for you. I'm only sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But she came and kept begging him. Then he tried to even make it harder for her to get away by saying, look, it's not right to take the children's bread and toss it to dogs. Right? Oh, they said, can you guys hear me okay? Can I be heard all right? Right? He said that it's wrong to take the children's bread and cast it to dogs. So right there, if you want to make a game, you want to play a game, there he compared this woman to dogs. It says it's not right to take what's meant for the children and give it to dogs. That's in your book. Okay. Now, I know the Christian is going to say, well, yeah, but he eventually helped her. Yeah, he did. You're right. He eventually helped her. But look what she had to go through to finally get the help. Look what she had to go through. First, she had to deal with him ignoring her. He's ignoring her like she's not even there. Then she has to deal with the fact that he's telling her, look, I'm not here for you. I'm here for the children of Israel, the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Then she keeps coming. Then he's still trying to insult her by telling her, look, it's not right to take the children's bread and give it to dogs. After all of that, finally he helps her. So the Christian, that's what they're going to say. Well, he still helped her. Yeah, but look what she had to go through in order to get that help. Why didn't he just help her at the beginning? But notice, regardless of whether he helped her or not, he still made it clear that she was comparable to a dog or dogs. Regardless of whether he helped her, finally, after all she had to go through, finally helped her, the point remains that he still told her that she was like a dog. So if you guys want to play that game, Christians, you need to worry about your own book comparing women to dogs. Okay? Worry about your own book comparing women to dogs. All right? So, with that, I guess we can see anybody got any comments. Anybody want to raise their hand and come up in Clubhouse? You got anything they want to say? If not, we can go ahead and end it there. Anybody want to raise their hand, come up, or is everything clear? All right, is that clear? Somebody want to come up? Okay, mashallah. Good. Nobody. All right, mashallah, that's fine. That's good. That means, alhamdulillah, we was able to convey the message very clearly. Alhamdulillah. Good. And let me check on YouTube. Any comments on YouTube? Let's see. All right, let's see. Somebody, Brother Abdullah Isa on YouTube says, Biblio says nothing clean can come from a woman. Yeah, that's true. I believe that. What is that? I think that's Book of Job. What is that? I forgot the exact verse. Book of Job. I think it's chapter 25, 24? Or 20? It's in Job chapter 25, I think. Let me see. Anybody in the thing, in the chat, can help me out with that one? I can Google it real quick, but I'm live right now. So, but I believe it's Job chapter 25, which says that, yeah, no one born of a woman can be justified with God. The son of a man is a worm in the eyes of God, stuff like that. But yeah. And by the way, yeah, you know what? Matter of fact, thank you. You've just given me the idea for another show. You just give me the idea for another show. Next show we'll do, inshallah, we'll deal with that issue of, since they want to make this comparison of how it is the Bible, Christianity, and Judaism that actually puts the woman down. Right? We'll go through the evidence to show them that it's actually their book that puts the woman down. Right? I'll give you a little preview. For example, like in the Old Testament, or the Hebrew scriptures, shows that the woman, it gives a difference between the birth of a boy or a girl. If the woman gives birth to a girl, she's unclean for a longer period of time rather than if she gives birth to a boy. Look at that. If she gives birth to a female child, her uncleanliness is longer than if she gives birth to a boy. Right? When a woman is on her menstrual cycle in the Old Testament, whatever she touches becomes unclean. Whatever she sits on, whatever she touches becomes unclean. But further than that, look how bad it is. That if you touch what she touched, doesn't mean that she left anything on it, like any physical remains of a period on it. Just if you touch it, If you touch what she touched, guess what? You become unclean to the evening time. So if a woman was on her menstrual cycle and she sat in a chair and she got up from the chair and you sat in the chair, even if it doesn't mean that she left any of her menstrual cycle in the chair physically, but she was just she just sat in a chair on her cycle. She got up. You sit in the chair after her. You become unclean too. You become unclean too. For the New Testament, we already know, right? The woman has to be silent when she's at church. She has to wait till she gets home to ask her husband if she has any questions, because she's not supposed to talk in church. She's supposed to keep quiet. But it only tells the woman to do that. It doesn't say men and women be quiet. It says the woman particularly, specifically, has to be quiet in church. So that's a preview of some of the things. When I do the show, I'll actually give you the verses and everything like that. So y'all want to play this game? We can play this game, Christian haters. Again, I'm talking to the Christian haters. I want to be clear what I'm talking about. We understand that there are some Christians who this is not your thing, and that's great and fine. But for the Christian haters out there who want to try to play this game, we can play this game too. So if you want to play this game, we can definitely play the game. All right? So yeah, inshallah, that'll be the next show that we do where we go through what I just talked about. All right, with that said, doesn't appear that there's any other things coming from the YouTube. Appreciate the people on YouTube who checked out. We have, as I said, Abdullah Isa. This brother has a name called False Sex Like Shia or Judeo Ibn Saba Made. Okay, I always ask the brother, what does that mean? But all right, that's his name on there. And if anybody, I just want to thank the people. Whoever watches the stream later, appreciate you checking the time out. Whoever listens to this stream here on Clubhouse later, appreciate it. I appreciate the support, appreciate the follows, the listening, all of that. May Allah reward you, and may Allah reward us all for our efforts that we do. All right. Brother Abdullah Hakim said that it's not clear. Why is it not clear? Let me see. Some people say it's going in and out. You know what? It might be because I have it in my hand, and maybe like I'm unknowingly moving it from my mouth like that, and it gets lower. Maybe that's what it is. I gotta keep it close to my mouth. Maybe that's what it is. All right. But as long as y'all were able to hear most of it, then inshallah that should be great. All right then. So I'm gonna get ready to close it out. We bear witness that there is no God but Allah. Muhammad is his final messenger. Again, may Allah, by the way, Eid Mubarak to everybody, right? Everybody, I pray that Allah has accepted our fast and our intentions for fasting, and you all have enjoyed your Eid Mubarak once again. Again, may Allah reward us, bless us, and allow us to go forth from this Ramadan with a new heightened iman, and may it stay with us until next year Ramadan. Ameen. All right, brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt y'all conversation.
Alright, bro. Alright, you have a good one, man.
Bye, Cross.
You gonna carry her again? You put your carry her no bills? No bills? You haven't played in a long time. Ross is a new carrier. You might be a bot, but. Dang.